Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Matt Rhule, Nebraska, rolling into 2025. And look, the conversation around this football team, at least in my opinion, is not necessarily if the step is going to take place. You know, the national media loves the year 3 Matt Rhule step. I look at the roster, then I look at the schedule and say, look, I expect a step to be taken going into the 2025 year. The question mark is, how big is that step? Until I look at the early portion of the schedule and say it is really, really gettable. It kind of similar to the conversation we were having 12 months ago in Nebraska. Couldn't get over the hump against that Illinois team on a Friday night. Can you do that this year? I'm looking at that Michigan game, September 20th. True freshman on the road in Lincoln, Nebraska. Can you go get it done there and kind of catapult yourself into the month of October and really get the ball rolling for this program? There is an opportunity. Can Nebraska go out and make it happen? I'm really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, the Nebraska fans, number one, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Many of the Nebraska fans, y'all been rocking with the boys for a very long time, and we appreciate it. More importantly than that, record predictions, expectations. Like, what is the expectation from the Nebraska fans for this team in 2025? Let it rip in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with the deal. Without further ado, hey, half glass full kind of guy. I'll give you 30 seconds, maybe 45 if I'm generous, to say, hey, sell me on this Nebraska football team rolling into 2025.
I mean, it obviously starts in the offense where I think you finally have a group that you can believe in to kind of like raise the margin for error for this Nebraska
That's a
team.
good way of
Because at
putting it.
times in the first 2 years, it's felt like when one thing goes wrong, their just offense could never kind of like dig them out of a ditch, like ever.
Yeah.
And I think that was
Yeah.
a real problem because it did just like really shrink the margins Nebraska had. I
Yes.
look at how explosive this group can be, led by a quarterback in Dylan Raiola, and having obviously Holgerson being the guy now and being able to run the show
Yep.
his way for a whole offseason. I look at this offense with those wide receivers. This can be a really explosive group. And I just think it allows Nebraska, when they play a team that they're better than, to kind of like step on them a little bit and
Yeah,
put their foot on.
and stop messing around with games that you should be winning by 2 scores. Matt Rhule even talked about that in one of the press conferences. Hey, I know we've had some fourth quarter late game struggles. Like, what I'm preaching to the guys is we shouldn't be in these fourth quarter games. If we're the better football team, we should be winning by 2 scores. I want to see more of that. I'm not looking at that Cincinnati game and the home opener, not home opener, excuse me. They're playing in Kansas City, saying, okay, that should be a game that Cincinnati's not a walkover, but I don't think it should be a game we're sweating with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I expect this Nebraska team to be better than Cincinnati. Can we avoid that? And Dill, having an offense that can score is big. There's two things that I'm most excited about with Dana Holgerson taking over this offense. One, it taking the training wheels off Dylan a little bit. Like, it felt like Coach Sat was really coddling Dylan a little bit in terms of the play calling. You brought him in here for a reason. Let him go rip the football around the yard. And then number two, we're making it a little bit easier on a routine basis, doing the simple stuff a little bit more. You go to Dylan and say, hey, the last 4 games when Dana Holgerson took over the offense, completion percentage shot up. Like, we're making life easier on Dylan. But at the same time, hey, we know we have a 5-star quarterback, and we're going to try to ask him to be explosive as well. Here's the question that I think a lot of Nebraska fans have is, hey, how dominant can this defense be? And can I clarify something? I know the Nebraska fans, we've been going back and forth in the comments section. This defense should not be bad. I have a ton of confidence in the linebackers, and I have a ton of confidence in the secondary. My big question here is not necessarily do we have good players on the defensive line, because I think you do. Do we have enough of them? Because I'm looking at the back half of the schedule and say, Dill, I mean, after that bye week, you're going on the road at Penn State, you're playing Iowa, you're playing at Minnesota in the middle of October. Saying, hey, if you want to win in the month of October and November in this conference, you have to be deep along the defensive line. And that's the question that I have for this Nebraska team rolling into the 2025 year.
Because you feel like you got it on the edge. Like, I love this edge room. I think he can be
Love it.
really I think you have some difference makers like McGahee. He's kind of a guy you look through. Have they had that type of talent in that room?
Deshaun
Probably not.
McCullough, I throw in there too. I freaking
Ron McCall
love.
could be an exciting one. So it's like, honestly, the questions all kind of percolate around like what is going to be the middle of the defensive line,
Yeah.
because you just don't have the like same size it feels like right now of guys who are proven, big, can do the dirty work, can be a little bit productive too.
And
Because Ty and Nash ate up so many snaps for
Bill,
that team. They're so dependable.
I would argue that you saw the depth of the defensive line kind of be a question mark even last year when you had Ty Robinson and Nash. They were forced to play a ton of snaps. And I'm going to that Illinois game Friday night, that game they lost. I believe it was in overtime. So like in the fourth quarter, we just were playing our defensive linemen too much because we didn't have adequate depth. That is my concern about Nebraska. It's not about do they have good players. I think they do. I think they have some difference makers. Do we have enough of them? And do we have enough of those big bodies in the middle of the defensive line to hold up 12 games in a Big Ten conference? Getting into the schedule here, Dell, you have to highlight this Michigan game, right? And look, I'm a Michigan fan. You're a Michigan fan. We're not super confident going on the road with a true freshman quarterback playing in Lincoln, Nebraska. If you are Matt Rhule, Nebraska, look, I think you should beat Cincinnati. If Nebraska's as good as I think they are, should beat Cincinnati. Take care of Akron. You take care of Houston Christian, and you're focused on Michigan coming to Lincoln, Nebraska, and say, hey, can you get it done? Can you go into the month of October with some real confidence around this program that we haven't seen in a very long time? Dale, you look at that Michigan matchup and say, what's the key here? What are we looking at? How are we breaking down that football game?
It's probably, can Nebraska play with a heavy box and stop the passing attack? Because that is the one thing I like. The way Sayer Wright kind of emerged as a guy in the boundary and what he was doing as like that number one corner, it felt like, for Nebraska, I feel like is big, because right now Michigan feels like they're going into this game with one wide receiver that you believe in. And even that, like Donovan Cully, I know the Michigan kind of beat reporters and coaches are talking. We haven't really seen him dominate college football at all. So I look like if Michigan can be balanced, I feel like their offense can maybe get a little bit something going. If Nebraska can play with a very heavy box and rely on their secondary to make it happen and be the unit I think we think they can be, I think they can put a lot of more pressure on this Michigan offense.
Yeah, it starts with forcing Bryce Underwood and these wide receivers to beat you. Yeah, I think, and then the other thing is this Nebraska offensive line, of which I actually have a lot of confidence in, like quiet confidence, but I'm confident. It's one thing to take a step on the offensive line, and it's another thing to block up some of the guys you're going to see at Michigan. Like, Derek Moore is going to be a top 20 NFL draft pick. TJ Guy probably going to be a top 50 NFL draft pick. Now, maybe inflating those numbers a little bit as a Michigan fan. Those guys are dudes. Do we trust our tackles to make it happen against those kind of guys? Because if Nebraska wants to go where they want to go in 2025, like you're going to see some really good pass rushers, especially in the back half of the schedule. Are we good enough up front to keep Dylan clean? Are we good enough up front to give Dylan a little bit more of a run game in year two? Because, hey, as a true freshman, we really didn't give him much in the run game. That Michigan game, we're going to learn a lot about this football team. We're going to learn about both of these football teams during that game. The next game I'm looking at is on the road at Minnesota. Because all these names highlighted in Greendale, like I think Nebraska, the expectation for me is Nebraska wins. Can you win one of two between Michigan and on the road against Minnesota? Because if you do, Dill, you're sitting with Nebraska 7-1 heading into the month of November. When you look at that Minnesota game, I'm sorry, I'm taking up a lot of time here. Very similar conversation. Later in the season, on the road in Minnesota, it ain't no secret what PJ Fleck is going to try to do. Do you have the guys to go toe-to-toe with Minnesota along the line of scrimmage for 4 quarters on the defensive line? If you can get that game done and kind of roll into November where it's hard, ain't no way around it. You're going on the road to UCLA, got USC at home, on the road at Penn State. If you can go into the month of November 7-1, this football team finally believing in themselves, this becomes a dangerous team. and they suddenly become in that college football playoff conversation.
In Minnesota's not like Michigan. They don't have a super high ceiling in my mind. It's not a wildly talented team. And I know they have some good players.
Yep.
Like Coy Parrish is obviously awesome,
Dog.
but they're not loaded with NFL talent. But they're gonna play really clean. They've played really clean for forever under PJ Fleck. And that at times has been a problem clearly for Nebraska, because Nebraska's made too many mistakes for the first couple of years. So that's when you kind of like gauge. I think Nebraska has more NFL talent, more NFL difference makers. Can they play a clean game in the way that Minnesota forces you to play a clean game to win? And again, that's where we get back to that margin of error kind of conversation. At times, Nebraska just hasn't had that. This offense, I'd love to see them be able to be explosive enough where they're kind of routinely getting into that 30, 40-point range. And then again, you can have some of those gaps, if you will, and still make it happen. So that to me is kind of the story of this team. Is this offense ready to emerge and be the carrier, if you will? Because I think it should.
I think that's fair. And then the month of November, there's no way around it. It's hard. Like I expect USC to be pretty good. They're coming to Lincoln, and you got to go halfway across the country, go play UCLA, get a bye, you go on the road against Penn State, and then you finish up with Iowa. Look, if you're 7-1, can you steal 2 of them? And then you're looking at a 9-3 football team. If you can steal 3 of them, maybe 10-2. Now we're kind of going crazy here, but 10-2, and then you're talking about potentially going to the college football playoffs. We'll see. Dill, over under 7.5 games. I'm gonna lean over because I think they can get there almost by the month of November, and then we just need them to make it happen against some teams that I think they have the firepower on offense to beat. I'll give you the T-box here. We taking the over under here with Nebraska.
And I think it's the correct kind of line, because frankly, it's kind of there. Because Nebraska has been in too many games against Michigan State where I know you're putting them kind of as a green or circle green, and it should be. They're far more talented than Michigan State, but they have been playing down to that level for the first couple of years under Matt Rhule. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that they go over that 7.5. I think they should. I'd like to think Matt Rhule has this team playing clean Matt Rhule football by now, with the talent they have to kind of give them a little bit of upside and some juice. But it's definitely not a guarantee, because it's not been what they look like the first 2 years.
I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Hey, record predictions, expectations, let it rip in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to talk to y'all later. Peace.